It's been said that life is like an onion. You peel a layer at a time, and sometimes you weep. You're watching Expensive Lessons with me, Wavinya. Welcome. You're watching Expensive Lessons with me, Wavinya. Welcome to the show. My guest today is David Maina. Welcome to Expensive Lessons.
Thank you, Wavinya.
This expensive lesson that you have for us today, I heard that a sneak peek of it is really expensive. Maybe you can tell us what it is and how much the bill, in terms of did it cost you?
Well, thank you, Wavinya. Well, I'm happy to be on the show. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And I'm actually also happy to share this expensive lesson of mine. I'm an entrepreneur, and several years back when my business was only in its second year, I got into a partnership that ended up costing me several millions of shillings.
Wow. Okay, so several millions, we're speaking millions, Kenya shilling millions, dollars, entrepreneurs, which currency?
It started as a $1 million liability.
Wow.
Although we managed to convert a lot of that into asset. And so we ended up not losing as much as we would have initially. Yes.
Wow. So we're talking about a $1 million liability. In Kenya shillings, do the math. When we return, we'll hear more about this. Don't go away.
Hope TV is where you look and live, with an excellent selection of the best Christian programming consisting of local and international content of inspirational stories, talk shows, Bible commentary, youth, health shows, children entertainment, contemporary gospel music, extended times of worship, live broadcast, news, movies, drama, Christian ministry programs, and so much more. Hope TV is another quality service from Christ is the Answer Ministries with over 45% of authentic and credible local content every week. Hope TV is a sister station to Hope FM, Kenya's leading Christian radio station with footprints across the country. Tune in to Hope TV, where you look and live.
Welcome back to Expensive Lessons. Today my guest is David Maina. We're speaking to him about his $1 million liability expensive lesson. I'm even trying to do this math of $1 million in Kenya shillings. I'm not sure I can, but maybe start from the beginning. How did you end in that kind of a ditch?
Thank you. Well, it started off a very rosy picture.
Okay.
I started a new business that was very capital intensive, meaning we needed a lot of equipment, a lot of machinery, and I invested my own money, about 6 million shillings, and we didn't have enough to have a lot of stock.
Okay.
So we approached one of our manufacturers. Then we had taken the approach that we wanted to be the best in the market. So we went out and looked for the best manufacturers there are, and we found one.
Okay.
In North America.
Oh, okay.
And
so you didn't even go China. You went to North America. Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we came up with an agreement that they would send us some consignment, which is equipment on their books. And once we sell it, then we would be able to pay them because we didn't have the money to stock it. And so it started off as an initial supposed to be $80,000 consignment.
So when you say consignment, so they were going to give you the goods and then because, maybe my viewers don't understand consignment. You can break down what consignment means. Yeah.
That's a good one. So consignment meaning that They would give us the equipment as stock.
Okay.
We don't own the stock, it's still owned by them.
Okay.
And when we sell it, then we would pay them for the stock.
Okay.
As opposed to the traditional way where we would have to actually pay them first
For
to
the
buy the
goods,
stock
yeah.
and then bring it over.
Okay.
So
That
it
is a
was
good
very
deal.
friendly to
Yeah.
begin with, very friendly. Until we got to a point where some of the senior people in that company said, well, they can't be involved in a $80,000 transaction.
Oh wow.
It needed to be more. And so that figure kept growing until they sent us stock worth $1 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you were holding in your warehouse. I mean,
Yes.
because I'm not even, in my mind, I'm trying to imagine how big a warehouse you need to occupy, to accommodate $1 million worth of stock.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, we had to create some storage space for it.
yeah,
So we rented some space from a warehouse company
yeah.
to stock some of it there. Most of it was high value, so it did take up too much space.
Okay.
But we eventually got it here, and we began.
That was exciting for you.
Very exciting, at the very beginning of the business, to receive that kind of support.
Yeah.
So we began trying to market the product, and we did, until a point where the manufacturer felt that the product was not moving fast enough. We had tried, we had sold about $200,000 of it, so
Okay.
about 1/5, but they wanted it to move faster.
So you received the goods what span of time are we talking about?
So the
Yeah.
goods were received in about 6 months.
Okay.
Yes. And the idea was that by the end of that year, we would have been able to have sold all of it. But by the end of that year, we had sold only about 20% of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Mhm.
So this is where the expensive lesson comes in. Because they then said, well, we don't normally give goods on consignment, but we said, let's give it a try to open a new market. And now that you're holding all this stock, we want you to buy it. And we just didn't have $1 million, Then they said, okay, well, you need to secure it. And we didn't have the security for $1 million. And that's when the expensive lesson began, because I received a letter from their lawyers, in essence demanding to take over the company.
Wow.
Yes.
So okay. So this bubble, in my mind, I'm thinking you're a 2-year-old company.
Yes.
That's hit it big, because I'm
Yes.
imagining, if you were only wanted to do $20,000 worth of consignment, and now you have $1 million worth of consignment,
Correct.
you must have been a big boy now in the industry.
We were very excited.
But then 6 months later, you're being asked to either buy
Yes, the stock,
the stock.
or basically hand over your company,
Or
because
hand
they
over
would
your
take over the
company.
majority shares as security for that stock.
So did you have lawyers when you received the stock? So okay, let me let you tell the story.
That's a good one. So I received a letter that was signed by very many lawyers. And at that time, we had a lawyer who was not even on retainer. Just a lawyer who I knew, who I said, you're my lawyer going forward. And so it was very scary, because they began to behave as if the company was theirs. They had sent over somebody from their head office who was actually directing my team on how to behave, regardless of the fact that in the marketplace, and what to sell, regardless of the fact that we had many other products apart from those ones from that particular manufacturer.
So this deal that you had also included stuff. They gave you stuff.
So initially it did not. They were using my stuff, but then they said that the value of the goods was so much that they needed to bring on board their staff, but they would pay their staff. So they also brought on board
A Mzungu.
an accountant, no, a Kenyan,
Oh, okay.
a Kenyan accountant who had studied in the US. And slowly by slowly, they began actually directing the affairs of the company, because when the accountant came on board, we have to have them as a signatory. They became a senior manager who would give instructions to the other staff.
In that 6 months.
Yes, in the second 6 months.
Okay.
Yes, in the second 6 months.
Huh?
So this boiled down eventually to one day when I found a meeting going on in my office that I was not aware of. We normally reported at 8. Apparently, there was a memo people to report at 7. I never got that communication, so I got to the office and found the manufacturer conducting a meeting in my office. And when I tried to protest, he suggested that I suggested we meet in my office. We got in. He asked that I shut the door, and I proceeded to shut the door. But on turning back, the visitor was sitting in my chair and telling me how things were going to go. So it was basically what you call an attempted hostile takeover.
Wow. Okay. So, wow, I'm still trying to wrap my head about
Yes.
from rejoicing that you have.
Yes. A good partner who understood our vision, who understood what we wanted to achieve, who was willing to support us by giving us stock to help to open up the market,
To now having
who
a
was
partner
hiring people on their payroll to
Yeah.
support us, to basically them saying that they were taking over the business. So that was a very big pill to swallow. In fact, I remember being disoriented as to what exactly is going on here.
Yeah.
I took a walk out of the office, to catch some fresh air, and then said, but wait a minute, I can't be walking out of the business and leaving these guys in my office. I need to go back and take charge. So I went back and basically undid the instructions that they had given, because legally, those were not the employees. I had given them appointing letters, and we had no contract that had said that that stock could be converted in any way, shape, or form into a debt or into equity or shares.
Wow. David, hold that thought. We need to take a short break. When we return, we will be hearing more on the continuation of this 1 million debt liability that David took upon himself and the company, and what happened next. Don't go away.
Join John Carson every weekday as he takes us on a journey through the Bible.
Whoever shall seek to save his life, if you go back to living for yourself, you're going to lose it. But whoever shall lose his life, give up his life for my sake, he shall preserve it.
Enjoy interesting, knowledge-packed, yet simple teachings through his humor and in-depth understanding of God's Word.
The last people that tried to put God in a box, literally, he rose again. He wouldn't stay in their compartment. If God was small enough for me to figure out, he wouldn't be big enough for me to worship.
Tune in to Hope TV for John Carson every 10 p.m., 4 a.m., and 10 a.m. weekdays on Hope TV, where you look and live.
Going back to the heart of worship.
Whether up the mountain or down the valley, we were created to worship God.
Enjoy carefully selected worship music every Wednesday all day long.
Oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
Miracles happen when you move. We take it a notch higher with more worship music.
Every Wednesday,
Is Worship Wednesday.
only on Hope FM. Listen and leave.
Welcome back from the break. For those who are joining us, we're watching Expensive Lessons. My guest is David Maina. He's sharing with us his expensive lesson, which had to do with being made to take on a liability of $1 million. So before we went on the break, you
Yes.
had gotten to a juicy place where you, which you called hostile takeover. You know, you've
Yeah.
come to your office. The meeting is now being chaired by your partners.
Yes.
And now you've retreated back to your office. So,
Yes. So, the so-called partners were actually just manufacturers supplying us with the equipment,
yes.
and I find them conducting a full-blown meeting in my office, which I was not informed of, and giving directions to my team on how they should sell their products. Yet we had other products, of course, that the team needed to focus on as well.
Yeah.
And we left off at the point where I get into my office to have a chat with this gentleman from the manufacturer's office, and with a lot of audacity, proceeds to sit in my chair
Wow.
and remove from his briefcase a letter from their lawyers demanding that either I pay for the consignment, the $1 million dollar consignment, or that I provide a collateral. And the discussion then proceeded to suggest that I would need to hand over the company to them so that they can secure their $1 million assets in stock.
Wow. So when he's given you this letter, did it have a timeline for when you were supposed to do this?
Yes, it did. It demanded that I act upon those guidelines within the next 21 days. So in 3 weeks.
Less than a month.
Yes.
Okay.
So then, of course, you can imagine the shock. We proceeded to have some very heated discussions about this, and the expensive lesson began there. It began dawning on me that I had overtrusted a manufacturer who said, "We are going to send you goods on consignment whenever you get to sell them." We never had an agreement on timelines. We did have an agreement that if the one sold within X timeline, that they would become an inherited liability on my part. And neither did we have any instrument to suggest the things that they were proposing, such as a convertible note where you could actually convert that liability into an equity stake for them.
Yeah.
So
what did you do?
So it became a legal issue. I had to consult lawyers and figure out where they were coming from and if they had any legal standing to demand what they were demanding.
Yeah.
And we found that they didn't. They just didn't have that legal standing. And so within the next few weeks, it was a bit acrimonious because we were quite merged. Remember, there were signatories to the account because they were funding the operations of marketing these products, which was the majority of the money coming into the company.
So you had made them signatories to your accounts?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, because when we
Yes, of
imported the
course.
equipment, it came into through the name of the company.
So they were pretty much, they were like the camel
Yes.
story. For one leg in and then another one.
Yes.
and
First
then-
the head, then the shoulders, then the whole body. So that, yes, became apparent, I think, also to their side that, we weren't gullible and we were not just going to turn over the company to them.
But did they give you an alternative to maybe bring someone else on board, sell these things, or
No. The two options were either pay up or cede equity in the company, basically. But we came to realize that there was an agenda behind that. The individual who had been seconded from the manufacturer to come and do this was contemplating retiring in Kenya, and this was supposed to be his retirement package, so that he can have a company to justify an expatriate salary while he was here in Kenya.
Wow. Okay. So now you got your lawyers.
Yes.
In my mind, I'm thinking, so if they're signatories to your account, so are you able to access money at this point? What's going on with the business at this point?
For about 2 weeks, there was turmoil because we weren't on the same page, and they were intent on taking over the company because they basically realized that I didn't have $1 million.
Yeah.
And neither did I have any collateral that would amount to that amount.
Yeah.
And so the intent was really to take over.
Okay.
But when they realized it wasn't working,
Yeah.
everybody had to sober up, and we had to come back to the table and discuss how do we then go forward.
Now that's the how is the part that I'm now waiting for, because I've been holding my breath. I'm thinking, how did you get out of all of that?
It was difficult, but it involved as an entrepreneur, as a business owner.
Yeah.
You do have to sober up, get the right advice. I got good commercial advice on contracts and realized we did not have any agreement that could give them the standing to demand that. I got good legal advice that told me that this was not actually a liability on my part and could not be assumed to be a liability on my part just because they said so.
Yeah.
And so we had to negotiate how to go forward. We both had an interest. The common interest was to get these solutions into the market by
Yeah.
selling them.
Yeah.
So we went back to the original plan and tried to do so. And still with a few twists and turns here and there.
Wow. So in my mind, I'm thinking, did you go home and tell your wife that you're losing your business and that you owe $1 million? I'm thinking back then, $1 million. I mean, even now it's a lot of money. You're probably thinking even if I sold my car, my
Yes.
house,
Yes, your
whatever.
plots, they might not get to $1 million
Yeah.
at that time. It was very difficult, especially because we had welcomed these people as potential partners in the business, as people who are helping us to grow the business. We had invited them to our home. We had dinners with them, and we were even traveling into the region with them. At one point, this individual invited his wife to come, and they had a safari, and we also took them round. And we took a trip down to South Africa to introduce them to one of our partners there.
So these were your friends?
They were friends. Yes.
Wow.
So it was a difficult challenge to be able to walk out of that in a healthy way.
Yeah.
But we eventually found a good way forward, which was we agreed that we would continue on consignment and that we would recognize the debt, that if we take on the consignment, it's a debt, and that we would pay it off as we sell the equipment, which we did.
So after how long? Because now, we were already a year into the deal.
Yes.
6 months, the goods come. Another 6 months, you've sold a fifth.
Yes.
So at what point now did you eventually get to sell the entire 100% of the consignment?
So basically after that first year, and we found a way to agree a way forward, it took us about two years, slightly over 2 years.
So this relationship had to continue
It
for...
took a while. And then there was another challenge because our books had gotten entwined. There was money that was coming from our operations into the accounts. There was money coming from them. We need to figure out how do we categorize the money coming from them? How do we separate the two activities and the two entities? And so that took a while with our auditors, but eventually we got the books cleaned up and we were able to...
It sounds like a
move
messy
on.
divorce.
Yes, it was a separation. Yes, because we didn't divorce completely. We continued the supply relationship.
Okay, great.
And the challenge is because you already have a relationship with your customers who are using the product.
Yeah.
So you don't want to cut off the relationship with the manufacturer. You want that to continue so that you're able to serve your clients, as best as possible.
Yeah.
And with continuity.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. So 2 years later, now you started a new journey, almost now, I guess, as equals, or...
Yes, so we went back to the original positions of a distributor who has a manufacturer who supplies them.
Yeah.
But it was time to take stock. It was time to say what went wrong here. And three things stood out. One was the fact that we took the relationship with rose-tinted glasses. We only looked at the positives. And so we didn't get into detailed contracts. And had we gone into that exercise, we would have discovered some gray areas that needed to be addressed legally.
Yeah.
The second, I think, was also as a young business, getting excited by somebody who's bringing real value, tangible value to you, may require you to seek some counsel and some advice, commercially and legally, because even what didn't look like a liability to me could have become a liability, so that's something else, another lesson. And then the last one was just making sure that you don't go to negotiate with big players when you're still very small. Try and grow the business a bit, build some equity, have enough muscle to be able to carry your weight on the table or in the room.
Wow.
So in hindsight, there were some very good lessons to be learned here. And I think the first lesson was be careful. When you get into partnerships and things sound like they're too good to be true, they probably are too good to be true. Do your due diligence, make sure that you check all the boxes, and before you partner with anyone, get good advice. I think the second lesson is get professional advice, commercially and legally. What may not look like a liability to you could be, and you won't be able to tell that unless you have some professionals advising you. So speak to auditors, speak to lawyers, speak to financial consultants. Sometimes we don't want to pay these fees, but it's money well spent, and it will save you a lot of headache, time, and possible loss. I think the third thing for me, and this is for all the optimists, if you look at life through rose-tinted glasses, always looking at the positives, remember that there could be things that may not be in your favor, even in an engagement that looks very positive. So make sure you ask yourself the three questions. 1, what could go wrong? 2, what is the worst case scenario? And 3, how do I mitigate those possible outcomes? Another important lesson I think that we picked from this was just the fact that we rushed into a relationship where we ended up with the manufacturer's money being put into our bank accounts. And that took a long time to try and separate the monies that belong to two different legal entities. I think if you're ever in a relationship that isn't clear at the beginning, maybe you're testing market, you're doing pilots, have separate bank accounts. It took our auditors over 2 years to just try and separate what was belonging to the manufacturers and what belonged to us. And that had a legal implication, it had a tax implication. And so my advice is whenever things aren't clear, make sure they are separate from the beginning.
Wow. Yeah. Those are some expensive lessons. Probably, as we wind up this segment, I'm thinking, have you ever done such a deal again? Probably, maybe not in terms of taking on that kind of liability, but now, venturing into $1 million businesses.
I from that experience, several quotes stand out to me. There's a quote that, once bitten, twice shy. And there's a joke that, how do porcupines mate? Carefully. And so I would approach business in a very careful way when it comes to partnerships. Before you partner with another entity, look at the pros, the cons, and ask yourself, what's the worst case scenario?
Yeah.
And then from there, begin to build the touch points of the relationship.
Yeah.
So I have partnered with others since then, but very carefully. And I think it was an expensive lesson, but a good one that ended well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. How do porcupines mate? Very carefully.
Yes.
David, thank you for sharing this story with us. And I hope, all of us have learned from your experience so that, we can be like porcupines as we enter into partnerships or any business deals, that we're very, very careful
Not to prick each other.
not to prick each other, to dot the I's and cross the T's. You've been watching Expensive Lessons on Hope TV.